So here we go. Hi. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Namaste, namaskar, pranam, adab, sat sri akal, vanakkam. And welcome to yet again session of the live chat. And today is a very special day. Actually, the special day was on Thursday, the Word Side Day. Every second Thursday of October happens with the Word Side Day. And we are doing a session on the eyes on that occasion. And we call it All About Eyes.
TLC, the live chat.
That small clip is courtesy Dr. Girish Pandit, who's a very talented admin of our group. No? So on this occasion of Word Side Day, we should talk about eyes, we should talk about vision, because that is the aim of this day, to bring about awareness of blindness, how to take care of your eyes, how to prevent and how to treat blindness. And we have got for at least three amazing experts in this today, And let me introduce them to you. They're all part of you. Dr. Seema Bajaj, who's who has been my friend from the Lady Hardinge Medical College days, where she did her MBBS from. Then she did her MBS from Safdarjung Hospital and DNB. She worked in Safdarjung Hospital, and right now she's working in ESI Hospital in Medical College. She specializes in cataract, squint, and retina. And besides being a great ophthalmologist, she's an amazing singer, which you've all seen, already. And incidentally, she's married to a very close friend of mine, Dr. Rajiv Bajaj, who's also an ophthalmologist and runs his own center in Pitampura. Rajiv and me were not just batchmates in Maulana Azad, but we were also roommates in the hostel. So, very thick friends. Dr. Shilpi Diwan, I was working with her at Vasan Eye Care. She has done an MBBS and MS and fellowship in cornea. She's from prestigious King George Medical College in Lucknow. At one point of time, which was a long time back, King George Medical College was one of the best colleges in the country. And then she's done her fellowship from Arvind Eye Hospital, Madurai, again a very renowned place. She's worked in Venu Eye Institute. She's worked in Vasan Eye Care with me. And she's worked for a long duration in Center for Sight. Right now, she's looking after her 7-month-old small daughter, and who she calls the lockdown baby. She specialized in cornea and refractive surgery. And I hope to see the 7-month daughter coming on camera also. How can she stay away for more than a few minutes from the mom? And we have the young, bright Dr. Ekta Shah, who's done her MBBS, MS, and a fellowship. She's done it mainly from DY Medical College and a postdoctoral fellowship from very prestigious institute called Shankar Nethralaya, Chennai. She's worked in Dr. Agarwal Eye Hospital, and right now she's working in Parshva Dental and Eye Care. She specializes in cataract and retina. So thank you, all three of you, coming onto the show for being our expert guest. And I am your host and Purana Dost, like my kid says. I did my education mainly from Maulana Azad Medical College and also from Lady Hardinge Medical College. And I spent significant time in Lady Hardinge. Then I went to Nepal in Manipal College of Medical Sciences as assistant professor. Coming back from there, I worked in a charitable place called Lions Hospital for some time. Then I joined Max Healthcare. Then I went to Vasan Eye Care. Then I went to Fortis Hospital, Gurgaon. And now I'm back in Max Healthcare. So a cyclical journey. So coming to the eyes. Eyes are our main interface with this world. We get maximum information, maximum knowledge, maximum input through the eyes. So in talking in terms of computer lingo, eyes is the main input device. This is the camera. And this has the highest representation in our brain, the so-called occipital cortex. So as I say, a picture can speak 1,000 words, actually much more than 1,000 words. So through the eyes, the information that goes into a body, into a system is amazing. It is the main sensory input channel. Though my wife tends to disagree because she's from ENT, she says that hearing is as important too. Hearing is more of an alarming sense, and the vision is the actually informing sense. So eyes are important. And actually all senses are important, and eyes are very, very critical for our survival. So let us talk about eyes, and let us talk about the common things which are relevant to most people in their daily lives now. So I'll be starting with some questions on the screen, and then we'll have our whole panel talk about those things. If you have any question, you can raise your hand in the chat here on Zoom, or you can put your question in the comment section of on the Facebook, and we'll take up those questions at the end. So one very important topic is the computer eye strain, or so-called computer vision syndrome. And I would say that COVID has brought in a second epidemic, which is called the computer vision disorder. So COVID can actually be, expanded into computer vision disorder. So it's a very, very important thing. So let us start with let's start with Seema. Seema, so why does computer vision syndrome happen? Like, what causes this?
So first of all, very good morning to everybody, and thank you, Sanjay, for calling me here. So you brought back memories of Lady Harding. I still remember when you used to come and teach us. I guess it was in our third year. And I very vividly remember you teaching us physiology of the eye. I guess you took a lecture on physiology of the eye. So life, sort of moves in circles. Today, back again, you're asking me questions after so long. Would have never thought. Okay. So coming back to computer vision syndrome, why it happens is because, see, basically our eyes are not made to function as such. Computers are a fairly new invention. When we look at the computer screen, we are looking at something which is very bright and for very long. And not only are we looking at the screen, we are also looking at other things at the time. Suppose you are reading something. So constantly back and forth, you are moving from the screen to what you're reading, maybe a book, some notes you're making, and this reduces the blinking rate. The amount of blinking when you're constantly staring at a bright screen is much, much less than what you should be normally doing. So this is one of the most important cause of fatigue in the eyes, which we call computer vision syndrome.
So, Ekta, what are the symptoms? How would a person know that he's or she's suffering from computer vision syndrome?
Patient will commonly come with the complaints of tiredness of the eyes, then constant rubbing, and at the end of the day, patient complains that there may be mild redness and I think fatigue. That is the most common complaint which comes. And tearing, there is a reflex tearing. That patient says that at the end of the day, there's more of tearing from the eye. This is when we suspect that patient is developing early dryness of the eye. That is the next question which comes is how many hours are they using the computer screen or a telephone, or a mobile phone or a tabloid. So most of these are working on tabloids and mobile phones, which has excessive light.
So Shilpi, are there any other factors which are responsible for this computer vision syndrome?
Yeah,
Sorry,
first
sir?
of all, thank you, Dr. Sanjay. It's a very nice, I think it would be very enlightening talk for all our dear TLC friends. This COVID era has definitely promoted long hours of working from home, and most of it is online. So this digital strain is caused mainly because of, as Dr. Ekta and Dr. Seema already told, caused because of looking on an auto-illuminated screen, which is non-physiological. That means our eyes are not constructed or they are not working in a physiological manner. The size of the font, the brightness of the screen, and the distance from the eyes at which the muscles are made to focus in order to read it from the phone or the tablet. Sometimes if we are lying down at night, all of us must be seeing that we hold the phone very close to our face. So actually the natural physiological reading distance is around 32 to 33 centimeters. But when we are using a phone, maybe sometimes it is very close to the face. So it causes a strain on the muscles. Also the ambient lighting of the room, the posture in which you are sitting for a long time over a laptop or a desktop or using a tablet or a phone, it also causes exertion on your neck muscles, back muscles, and also on eye muscles. The brightness of the screen has to be adjusted according to the ambient light. That is one important thing one has to understand. Sometimes if you see people working at night, they switch off all the lights in the room and it's very dark and the screen is very bright. So it creates a very high contrast. That is an added strain to the eye. So it is always suggested, advised that ambient light should be adequate. The distance from the eye should be good and the font size should be increased. In case a person is working on a tablet or a phone, then it is advised to increase the font size. You can just pinch it and zoom in so that your eyes are not made to work for long hours in an unphysiological way.
Yeah, so that's important. And like Seema said, that our eyes were not designed to work like this. See, we were all hunters and gatherers. Now, we were supposed to be living outdoors, looking at far out things, spotting a food, a fruit, or vegetables, or any prey, and going after it and catching and eating it, and looking at near things while you're eating it. So most of the time, we were supposed to be looking at far off natural stuff, and then for a very short while looking at near things. Now the reverse has happened. 95% or 99% of the time we're looking at the near things. No, 5% of the time at far off things. What? TV or driving. Everything is visually strenuous now. So our eyes are actually being abused to be made to work in a way they were not designed for. No? When we're looking at a near distance, our eyes have to converge and focus for near. So it puts a lot of muscles, strain on the muscles. No? Although looking at near thing converging is a simple task, but it's like, if I ask you to stand with your hands up, it is fine. It's very simple. For 5 minutes, it's simple. Do it for 1 hour. After half an hour, you'll end up with pain in your shoulder. Just standing for a few hours, you'll not be able to stand. But we do this to our eyes day in, day out for hours together. So kids are taking online classes. People are working from home, and either people are working or they're studying or they're entertaining themselves or they're connecting with their friends, they're connecting with the world all through the screens. And smaller the screen, closer it is placed, worse it is for the eyes. So as the panelist rightly said, there's dryness, there's a muscle strain, discomfort in the eyes. So actually there's no fixed duration after which you'll get this strain. Some people may experience it maybe after a couple of hours also. Some people may experience it after a few hours. Some people say we've been working for many, many years, for very long hours. It is all fine. Suddenly, this strain has started. Yes, all this can happen. And this all is because of the strain of the screen. So what can be done to take care of this and what can be done to prevent this? Seema, and you start with that.
See, before this COVID era, we would always say limit your screen time, especially to the kids. The Indian Pediatric Association also had come out with this, that not more than 2 hours of screen and TV time. But now the reverse is happening. It is something which has become part of our lives. We are all connected online. So that part, at least now we cannot say about limiting the screen time, but yes, how to use our eyes in that screen time so as to decrease the fatigue. So one would be the glare, to reduce the glare from the screen. So that is where you're sitting. Usually make a spot so that there is no direct glare on the computer screen. Avoid glare as much as possible. If that is not possible, try to use an anti-glare screen in front of your computer. There are also very effective anti-glare glasses, though their role is still not very clear, but still I would recommend. And there are nowadays, people are also recommending glasses with blue filters for the kids. It is said to decrease fatigue. There is no harm in using it, though the role is still not very well documented. Second would be the font size, as Shilpi had said. Take a comfortable font size in which you can read with ease without straining your eyes too much. Third would be the 20-20-20 rule, which we all know about. That is, you have to take a break after every 20 minutes for 20 seconds at least and look at a distance about 20 feet away. That means either you can just close your eye or look at a faraway point.
But Seema, I feel that this 20-20 rule, though it sounds very poetic,
Yeah,
but practically it is not enough. Taking a 20-second breaks after 20 minutes, just to look at something which is 20 minutes far, it is very, very poetic, but it's not helpful at all. It is not really...
Not only helpful, it is very difficult to follow, I guess, because the person will forget it while working on the computer. How will he remember it? But the point basically I'm trying to get across is try to take breaks whenever you can. Whenever you can.
I feel the break has to be done more frequently. The break has to be longer. I personally always tell people to take every 15 minutes. Just sit back, turn your head back, close your eyes for 1 minute. It does two things. That not only it rests your eyes, not only it prevents dryness, it also takes care of your back and your neck. Because when we're working on the screen, invariably our back and neck is slightly bent. So turning the head back and closing eyes for a minute every 15 minutes, is helpful. And it's not, you don't waste any time. Students often ask me, I say, okay, fine, 15 minutes, read, turn back, close your eyes. Think of what you have read in those 15 minutes. So use this 1 minute also to recall, so that your learning is not interrupted, but your
Yes.
eyes are rested. And yes, people forget, but I believe that there's some programs now which one can install on the computer, which can remind you to take care of your eyes, and teachers should know that. Teachers should remind the students that yes, every 15 minutes, then now close your eyes and think about what I taught you in the last 15 minutes.
Also, because to prevent dryness, your seat should be such that the direct, the AC is not falling directly on your face, the fan is, that will increase the dryness, which can lead to a problem in the long run. And your eyes should be, your positioning is important.
Yes.
Your eyes, the computer screen should be slightly below the level of your, so that you don't have to strain your neck too much.
Yes, yeah. So it should be, the screen should be high. It should be just below the eye level, so that
Eye level.
you're not looking. Your neck is not bent. See,
Right.
nobody works like this, but a slight bend in the neck is bad for your neck and back. Because over a period of time, if you're sitting for hours together in that position, it's not good for the neck. So the neck and back should be straight. So the skin should be high enough, just so the eyes are slightly bent.
Slightly inclined.
Bent, yeah. And in terms of dryness, Shilpi, so you are a cornea expert now. So what would you say that how to prevent dryness from happening in the eyes when you work on the screen?
Okay. First of all, while working for long hours on a digital screen, dryness is experienced. So there can be two types of precautions or measures taken by a person to prevent the symptoms occurring because of dryness. Firstly, the environmental factors. That means, as Dr. Seema just said, the AC vent shouldn't be directly over your face. It should be overhead or behind your head. And fan shouldn't be on a very high speed because it causes a lot of evaporations of the tear film from the surface, which leads it to be dry. Second thing is blinking. Blinking is a normal mechanism. When we blink, it acts like a wiper of the windscreen of the car. It spreads the droplets of water evenly. So similarly, when we blink, the tear film is evenly distributed over the surface of the cornea, and it prevents from drying. So when we are working on a digital screen, a lot of time, because of the engrossment into the work, people forget physiologically there is a decrease in the blink rate. So one should make very conscious effort to blink frequently while working. As you said, there are many companies which have an inbuilt program which shows on the screen, or what you can do, you can paste it in front of your screen, in front of your cabinet or a wall or your workstation, which reminds you to blink frequently. Keep yourself hydrated. Always keep a glass of water. I have a glass of water here. So even though we are not having this session for very long.
I have a flask of water.
Very good, sir. That has to be done because hydration of the body is again very important. Next thing, if people are working for, especially the IT professionals, for the students who are working for long hours on computer or any kind of digital screen, they can use non-preserved lubricating eye drops. These are, as we commonly call them, tear substitutes or tear supplement drops. They are easily over-the-counter medicines, easily available in any pharmacy. They can be used maybe 3 times or 4 times, or if a person takes the break maybe after morning, afternoon, evening, they can be used as per requirement, because different people will have different requirement. So that is one thing which people can do, and these things will definitely help. And most importantly, while working, just remember to close your eyes after 15-20 minutes or half an hour, whatever your work permits. That would be very helpful, because when you close the eye, the tear film is spread evenly over the surface, and it kind of hydrates the entire ocular surface, including the conjunctiva, palpebral, bulbar, and the cornea. So this will help the person in long run.
Ekta, what more can be done to prevent this kind of a strain?
Sorry, sir, I didn't get you.
What more can be done to prevent strain or to be able to deal with the long hours on screens?
So lately, I've been getting a lot of school children as my patients. The mothers get them saying that at the end of the day, children are complaining that they have tired eyes, they have fatigue, they are not interested in studying after their online classes. So my common question was, how long are those classes for? So I got to know that they are like 40 minutes per session for, like they have 4 sessions a day. So that is like 40 minutes with 10-minute break, goes on for like say 3 hours a day. And after that, I asked them, what do they do after that? So they said they may sit with some phone or they'll sit and watch TV. So I had to explain to the parents that already they are exposed for a very long time. They need to go outside the house and play. So that was my most simple solution which I could give to the parents, that they need some outdoor sport, which is lacking. So I think awareness among the parents is equally important. Not just prescribing drops is going to help them. So at the same time, I think lifestyle modification is also needed, because these classes, we don't know how long they're going to last. And I think same goes for the adults as well, because we are lacking that outdoor sessions of some sport or some lifestyle where we step out of the house and do something other than seeing a phone or a tablet or a computer. And treatment, I think we are giving the best what we can.
Right, right, correct. So see,
One
so
thing I'd
what,
also like to add, Sanjay, sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I would like to add is that they should always get, children should get their refractive errors corrected. You should be, if you are wearing glasses, the number should be correct, because that will increase the computer vision syndrome, increase the fatigue if you're not wearing the correct number. And especially in the presbyopic age group, you need to visit your eye specialist and get a correct number. That definitely helps in reducing the computer strain.
correct. That's very important to you, that wearing the right corrective power is required, no? And so when I tell people that, there are things to be taken care of when you're looking at the screen. Screen should be high up, screen should be far up from the eyes. The background illumination should not be too different from the screen illumination. No glare light should be there. Your back and neck should be straight. Wear corrective glasses, If you do not wear corrective glasses, you can wear plain glasses with blue filter. Blue filter, there are some recent studies which say that blue light is harmful for the eye. It's not confirmatory, but there's no harm in wearing blue glasses. It at least prevents a bit of drying of the eyes. The draft of AC should not be hitting your face. Then things they should do every 15 minutes. Sit back, close your eyes, turn your head back, give your rest to your eyes. Things you should do every hour. Take a short walking break. So take a 5 minutes break every hour. Go for a jog, go for a walk, or just do some physical exercise. You can just do some palming of your hand. You can do some rotational exercise of the eyes also. Every 6 hours, so you should take a healthy meal, do some relaxation technique, and every day you must do some eye exercises. So convergence exercises are extremely helpful in strengthening your muscles to be able to deal with the strain of near work. And things you should do weekly. Every week, you should have at least one day which should be screen-free day, or maybe a screen-free weekend should be built, Because the people who complain of a lot of visual strain, they say that on the weekends they're better off. So take some time off from the screens also in the week. So these are the things that one can do for the computer vision syndrome. So let's see that what is the next thing we have. Spectacles. So that's a very, very important thing. Spectacles or the refractive errors. So what are the refractive errors? What causes them? What to do with them, and whether to wear glasses, lenses, how to get rid of the glasses. Let's talk about that. Shilpi, so please tell us, you are a refractive surgeon. So what are refractive errors?
Okay. So if we all remember our physics from class 8th or 9th, we know that a parallel bundle of light rays, when it passes through a lens, convex lens, they go parallel straight and then they converge to a focal point.
Shilpi, wait. Nobody remembers physics.
Okay, so just let me cut short and come to what is refractive error.
But nobody remembers physics,
Okay, fine. So these are conditions in which the eye is designed in such a way that the light is not able to form a sharp image over the retina. That means a person usually who will not require any spectacles to see things clearly does not see the image. The image is not formed inside his or her eye clearly. It requires the alteration of the light rays or the image to be altered in such a way with the help of particular corrective lenses in the form of spectacles or contact lenses, so that the light falls onto the retina and makes a sharp image. In the absence of the spectacles, the person will be seeing blurred. So basically there are two types or three types of refractive errors of eyesight problems, in which first condition is myopia or nearsightedness, in which the person is not able to see clearly the things which are coming from far distance. Second kind of condition is hypermetropia, in which the person is not able to see clearly for things at a near distance. Third type of distance is refractive error is astigmatism, in which there is a distortion or tilting of the image. So according to the type of the refractive error, we use the glasses or the lenses in the spectacles, which reverse the error and neutralize it. And that helps to form a clear and sharp image onto the inside the eye, which is processed in the brain as a clear and a crisp image and help person see clearly.
People often can get confused that this, the near thing happens after the age of 40. And
Coming to that, the problem in near vision, which comes with age, that is usually after the age of 40 or 45, that is known as presbyopia or nearsightedness with age. That is a condition which happens because of the aging of the natural lens inside the eye and the suspensory ligaments, the zonules, which get weakened and lose the power of accommodation. It is quite possible that the person who has never used glasses in the entire eye, once that person reaches the age of 40, because aging is a thing which we can't prevent, the lens and the zonules are going to get aged and they are getting weakened, and then we have a problem in focusing at a near object. That manifests as a problem in focusing at the near object. A person will say, doctor, I was able to look at my watch and see the time correctly. Now I have to take my wrist further behind so that I can see the watch. I used to read newspaper at a distance of 33 centimeters or a normal distance. Now I have to take the newspaper further back. I could look at my mobile phone, but now I have to take it far. That is an age-related weakening of near vision. That is known as presbyopia. For that, a person has to be given glasses in the form of reading glasses, which help, or we can say correct the near vision, so that the person is able to focus at the near objects as previously.
Seema, these conditions often start in early childhood. No? So how would the parents find out whether the child has got any refractive errors in myopia or hypermetropia or astigmatism? How can parents find out?
See, basically, if mostly I would say that there are two types of such, when parents get their children. One in which the parents themselves are wearing glasses, and glasses of, significant number. These parents are aware right from the beginning that, okay, my child also could be having these refractive errors. So they would bring their children at a fairly young age for correction. Two are when the child starts going to the school. These days at a very young age, children are exposed in the preschool. So there also, they will come to know. And thirdly, there would be some conditions in which the parents will be able to make out, suppose that the eye of the child is deviating, or even a very small child is not able to, look at the TV or follow light properly. Again, in those conditions, the parents would be bringing the child at a fairly young age. But averagely speaking, I would say once the child starts going to school, what I've seen in my practice, and the teachers start noticing, that is when the parents usually bring the child for an eye checkup. But if there is a family history, yes, I feel it should be brought early, and the parents themselves too tend to bring the child earlier for a checkup.
So do you think that the heredity plays a role in refractive error?
Yes, definitely. There is a hereditary role, but not all. It is not the only cause. Like sometimes parents will come and say कि डॉक्टर साहब हम तो चश्मा पहनते नहीं, घर में कोई दूर दूर तक चश्मा नहीं पहनता और बच्चे को कैसे चश्मा लग गया. So yes, it is. Genetics does play a role, and it is generally seen that high myopes parents can have children who have high myopia or hypermetropia, or even astigmatism. I have seen sometimes it follows the same pattern in children, but not necessarily. Even when parents are not wearing glasses, children can wear glasses.
Parents are often worried that looking at the screens for so long or these online classes, they will lead to glasses number or myopia or worsening of myopia. Is it true?
No. See, there is no study as such which proves this. But yes, fatigue, as we have discussed previously, eye fatigue will definitely occur due to prolonged strain, but no, it will not lead to development of refractive errors.
So what do we do for these refractive errors, Ekta, for the kids, like how do we correct them?
See, when a child Yeah, Dr. Ekta was, yeah.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Sorry.
No, Ekta,
Ma'am can go along. It's
no,
okay.
please continue, Ekta, please do. Please do. I'm sorry.
Okay. So for children, I think first and foremost, I would want to add one more thing that parents come that many of the times that we try and who our kids from distance, they are not able to notice. But when we come closer, they kind of notice us. This is I've seen for preschool age, so less than 4 years or so, and the parents get to the doctor saying they are not able to notice us from distance when they are playing. Also, the toys which are shown to them from distance, they are not able to grab it, but when got closer, they kind of recognize it. So that is one thing which I feel was very important for a preschool age, less than 4 years. Uh, Regarding treatment, I think for children, very important it is that we do a cyclodilatation and then find out the refractive error, the type of refractive error, whether it's hypermetropia or myopia. So less than 5 years, we commonly encounter hypermetropia, and we need to correctly refract them by a retinoscopy and give them appropriate glasses. So plus is what we give to children having hypermetropia, and minus lenses is what we give to myopic children who are normally diagnosed at the school going age. So I think this is the common question which parents ask me is, as and when the kid grows, will the plus number go away and or will the minus number increase? So again, that is a controversial topic, I think, which I really want to know on that. So I think Dr. Seema can enlighten us on that, whether the hypermetropic lenses may increase and get back to zero, or the myopic lenses increase.
See, myopia, we all know. Myopia we all know it is due to an increase in the size of the eye, and as the child grows, as the whole body grows, so does the eyeball grow. So I always tell the parents of the child that when we prescribe the first minus lens, that it will increase, because parents usually think कि एक बार चश्मा लगा लिया तो अब चश्मा हट जाएगा after putting, like it's like a medicine that you have given it for 6 months, and then so it is very important to counsel the parents, especially of a myopic child, that as the child grows, his eyeball will also grow along with his body, and his myopia will definitely increase. At what speed, at what rate, we cannot say, but it will increase, and you have to get a checkup done once a year at least for the child. And I also advise parents of myopes for a very healthy lifestyle for the child, to indulge more in outdoor activities, to eat a high protein diet, so that the myopia does not advance. There is less of thinning of the eyeball, and you can arrest. There is another topic to this. I will ask Dr. Sanjay to discuss about the use of low dose atropine in this. These days, a lot of people are into it. And about hypermetropia, again, see, parents feel ki, first thing is that a plus number they feel is more associated with an increased age, like we have discussed before, but that is not so. So it is important to tell them this is also a refractive error. It will not go away. It might change. It might change, it might reduce, it might increase, we cannot say. So it is very important. The most important thing is to get an yearly examination at least to assess how the number is going to change, but it will not go away. And more important for plus numbers, because it is more used, the eyes is more used for reading in this age group. So it is very important for the children to wear it. It's not that because he can see clearly at a distance that he does away with the glasses. He has to wear it continuously, because otherwise it will affect his studies.
So coming to the point of increase in the number, see what happens is that in very, very simple terms, the eye is like a camera. And when the images are not focused on the screen of the camera, that is what we call a refractive error. They can be, and with age, the eyeball tends to increase. So if it increases, there is a shift towards minus side. So myopia tends to increase a little bit, and plus number tends to decrease. Depending on how much increase of the eyeball size will happen, leads to a decrease in the hypermetropia or increase in the minus number. Yes, minus number tends to increase with growth, plus number tends to decrease with growth. How much? Nobody can predict. Cylindrical number, astigmatism usually remains constant over a long period of time, does not change much. Some studies done, some research done in the Asian kids have found that a lot of close and near work, not just screen viewing, reading work, is a factor which can actually increase the myopia to some extent. So some studies have shown that. And to counter that, a drug has been, is being used, they call the low dose atropine eye drops, which relax the muscles of the eyes, and that is given on a daily basis for kids 5 to 15 years of age with the hope that myopia will not increase as much. But these are all very initial stages, more of an experiment thing. It is not confirmed as yet, so one should not really jump onto things, with a very great hope about it. You can read about it. Parents can read about that. If they want to try it in their children, they can try it out also. But again, there's no definite. There are some studies which have shown some results, but no short thing, and no great results as such. They have some beneficial role in preventing the progression of myopia. Some kids don't want to wear glasses, especially the teenagers and all. No. So Shilpi, what do you say? What do you say is for them?
Glasses as such for younger kids, if a person does not use glasses, does not want to use glasses, especially the kids, the only option is to use contact lenses. But contact lenses, as we all know, they are applied directly inside the eye, over the cornea. So that is a very delicate structure and it has to be handled very carefully. And also there are a lot of issues in the maintenance of the contact lens, and the practice of inserting and removing the contact lens has to be done very carefully. So in my practice, I don't feel that the contact lenses should be given to kids less than 13 or 14 years of age, maybe preferably 14. So it's the duty of the parents to make the kid understand that they are not grown up enough to take care of the contact lenses, because these kids, they see things, hear things in the school from their colleagues, from their friends, on the internet, television, and they are not sensible enough to understand the pros and cons of everything, and they might kind of insist that they don't want to wear glasses and they want to wear contact lenses. So it's the job of the parents to make the kids understand that only after the age of 13 or 14, they are adequately grown up to take care of the contact lenses. After age of 13 or 14, if the parents want their kids to wear contact lenses, they have to take them to an ophthalmologist and give a proper session of they should be taught how to insert the contact lenses, how to remove the contact lenses, and given all the instructions about how much duration they have to use. Many times parents also, they are quite satisfied, oh, the kid is not wearing contact lenses, he has to go for his basketball classes, or the child has to go for his dancing classes or karate classes, so they cannot definitely do with glasses, so they have to wear contact lenses. So they need to understand that contact lenses, especially in kids, should not be used like glasses, like 24/7. There is a very limited duration for which contact lens can be used or should be used in a continuation. So I prefer that for kids, not more than 6 to 7 hours in continuation, because no matter what the advertising or what the companies advertise that they are high oxygen lenses or they increase the permeation of oxygen, the contact lens is ultimately a very sophisticated piece of plastic which is put over the cornea. So it obstructs, in very simple layman term, I'm telling that it obstructs the passage of air from passing from the tear films into the cornea. So that might lead the deprivation of oxygen in the cornea and cause damage. So after every 5 to 6 hours in continuation, the child has to remove the contact lenses. The parent should tell if the child wants to wear contact lenses morning, they can wear it while going to school, and once they are coming back from school, they have to remove the contact lenses and then put on glasses. but the kids have different classes after the school. So they want to wear contact lenses for the different classes. So the parent should advise that they have to take a break in between at least 1 or 2 hours before wearing contact lenses again for 4 hours or 3 hours or 5 hours again at a stretch. So that has to be very clearly told to the parents that it is not a substitute for glasses. It cannot be used just like the glasses are. They have to be used with a lot of caution, and they have to be very healthy practices in using the contact lenses, like washing your hands very clearly with a good soap before removing or inserting your contact lenses every time. Kids are in a hurry, they go out to play and they come back and they just remove the contact lens and put it in the case. And also how they keep their contact lenses, it has to be kept in the properly submerged in the solution provided with the contact lens. The eyes should never be washed with tap water or any kind of water when the contact lenses are on. I have had patients in which the kids were in a hurry, they went to take a shower with the contact lenses on. So that can lead to really a very devastating kind of infections and a lot of problems in the eye. So the parents and the child, they need to be educated very properly before dispensing contact lenses to them. That is one thing which I have to say.
Yeah, so that's important. There are two main things with the lenses. Number one is that they need utmost care and handling, in terms of cleanliness of your hands, cleanliness of the lens, cleanliness of the case also.
Yes.
Then because there's a risk of infection is very, very high, and bad infections can actually lead to poor vision as well. Secondly, the contact lens onto the cornea, it kind of chokes the cornea over a period of time. It literally chokes the cornea. So the duration has to be kept to minimum. So I always tell, that till school age, stick to glasses. After school age, go for the lenses. After you come out of the college, you can go for refractive correction also. But sometimes I say, okay, fine, that girls are slightly more mature and more motivated to take care of the lenses. So they can be allowed occasional wear of lenses earlier than guys do. For specialized activities, for occasional wear, yes, one can go for lenses. Disposable lenses, daily disposable lenses are better than reused lenses because they require lesser care and they are somewhat safer.
True.
But on the whole, yes, that kids should stick to the glasses. But there are some situations, where even for a smaller child, we advise contact lenses. And those are the conditions where the refractive power in the two eyes is grossly different, and it cannot be balanced in the glasses. And those are the cases where we tell the parents to put the lenses onto the eye of the child and take care of that part. Those are special conditions where, of course, so it's best to discuss with your eye specialist about the use of lenses in your kid's case. So, Ekta, tell me that what else are the options for treating refractive errors? There's something called, they say that these days, you put the lenses on at night, and the daytime you don't wear lenses. What is that?
So I didn't get your last part.
The ortho K lenses.
Orthokeratosis.
Orthokeratosis, yes.
Yes, yeah.
This is a type of a condition where the cornea is not a proper shape. There is a treatment known as orthokeratosis where they are trying to shape the cornea by giving these lenses and correcting the anomaly of the cornea. So in such cases, they are to stop the progression of the shape, the progression of the corneal abnormality. They are giving special lenses just to maintain the shape of that cornea. And these are the conditions which is known as keratoconus. So in keratoconic eyes, this is the treatment which is done, sir. Also,
I was talking about the ortho K lenses, which are used to correct the refractive error in the daytime, by wearing them at night time. And so, are they okay to be used, or they're not okay to be used?
No, I'm not aware of it, sir.
Okay. So, Shilpi, what do you say?
So orthokeratology is actually a very controversial topic all across the globe. The concept behind this is that there are specific type of rigid lenses which are used overnight. So for a duration, if a very hard lens is put over the cornea, it conforms the shape of the cornea. So usually they are used for low to moderate myopia. So they say that if it is worn for a duration of around 7 to 8 or 9, 10 hours during the night, so it alters or flattens the cornea to that an extent that it stays in that shape for the next 6, 7 hours during the day. So you wear it overnight, daytime you remove, and the concept, the hypothesis or the concept is that the cornea is flattened enough to reduce your refractive error. So during the daytime, you can, for the next 5, 6, 7 hours, you can go without glasses. But there have been a lot of case reports, there have been a lot of incidences which say that overnight wearing a contact lens is a very unhealthy practice, especially because we are not blinking, we are sleeping with the eyes closed. As such, there is no exchange of oxygen, the eye is closed, there is buildup of CO2, and then there is an artificial barrier between the cornea and the tear film. So further, as you said, the corneas are getting choked. So that leads to a high incidence of infection. So as I told you, this practice is not very fulminant, it's not prevalent. And I personally don't advise for orthokeratology because I have personally treated a few cases with very bad corneal infections, the patients who tried orthokeratology. One was after 7 days of usage and the other was after
I think the network is bad.
try anything just by reading on internet. They have to go to the eye specialist and get the details about it before trying anything on their eyes.
I would, Sanjay, I would like to add something regarding something very interesting regarding the though I have never, like Shilpi said, never recommended them, never used them. But I have seen few optometrists, even in my department, they prescribe these ortho-K lenses for a patient who has to go in for medical. I don't know if you are aware of it, that, and this was something which was very new to me. And they have so much belief in it, that yes, this is for a myopia of, let's say, 1.5, they say, ma'am, it will correct it and the patient will be able to clear his medical. So this is something which I have been demotivating them, that no, this is not the right way to get rid of your myopia overnight.
So this is exactly the reason why I brought up this question, is that some people are using these lenses to fool the system.
Yes,
When they go for
yes.
a medical examination for defenses, for forces, they wear those lenses on and they take the lenses off in the daytime and get them sort of examined. They are trying to fool the system and get into those jobs and those professions. But it is harmful for their eyes. It is harmful for the system also.
System as such, yes.
Yes, so one should not do that. And though some people say it's a new technique, it's not new technique. Orthokeratology was started way back in 1981 and 1982, and it was given up because the side effects, the adverse effects were so severe that orthokeratology was given up within a year's time. It was not practiced thereafter. It's come back again recently as a new fashion thing, but one should avoid this. There are better ways to correct the refractive error. So what is this laser surgery to correct the refractive error, Shilpi?
Yeah, coming to the laser surgery, which is a very hot topic, and commonly the most prevalent surgery is LASIK, which people say that the chashma utarwani ka operation jo hota hai, it's a laser surgery. Basically, it's a type of corrective surgery in which the curvature of the cornea is permanently altered using the laser rays to neutralize the refractive error. That means the number of lens which a person is wearing in spectacles, that is in a way type of incorporated inside the eye by carving the cornea in that fashion. So the commonly done and the most prevalent surgery which is done for like more than few decades now is LASIK. And other ones, newer ones are SMILE, which is using a femtosecond laser. The other surgery is a PRK or a surface ablation. So these type of surgeries are kind of a permanent solution for removal of refractive error, but they can be done only after the age of 18 and when the progression of the refractive error, that is the power of the spectacles, has not progressed for at least 1 to 1.5 years. It doesn't matter that the child has crossed the age of 18 years, but if her number is still increasing, then we don't do the surgery even if the child is 20 or the younger adult is 20, 22, 23. It is most important that the eye refractive error number progression should be halted for at least 1 to 1.5 years. And of course, there are various other tests which have to be carried out before making sure that the individual is clear to go for surgery. These surgeries remove the requirement of glasses maximally till the age of 40, 45. But after the age of 40, as we discussed earlier, the requirement of the near glasses, that is the presbyopia, that would still persist. It does not remove the changes which occur with the age. The progression of the cataract, the requirement of near glasses, all those things will still occur when the time comes. But the current use of glasses from the age of maybe 20, 22, when the surgery is done, till the age of 40, that period would be relatively free from glasses. That is the purpose of doing a refractive surgery.
Seema,
There are other
how safe are these surgeries, Seema?
See, now that there has been a considerable time since these surgeries are being done, so the safety profile is very high. As like any other surgery, even for cataract surgery that matter, every surgery has its inherent complication rate. So it is also in this surgery. But in this, the most important criteria is a very comprehensive, thorough examination of the eye before the eye surgery by the treating ophthalmologist, in which various parameters of the cornea, because here the surgery is performed entirely on the cornea, which have to be checked. Only when that particular cornea is able to fulfill all those requirements for the surgery should be performed, which a eye surgeon will definitely tell you. And sometimes your eye is rejected on the basis of those criteria. So in those cases, if one surgeon says, okay, no, your cornea is not suited for the surgery, then you should not go in for the surgery, because then later on the chances of developing complications are pretty high. So otherwise the safety profile as of now is pretty good.
So we get to hear different names of surgeries, LASIK, femto
Yes,
LASIK, SMILE,
yes.
customized LASIK,
Yes.
SBKs, Ioptics,
yeah.
all those fancy names.
Yeah.
And it leads to more confusion.
More confusion.
So is one better than the other, or these are just ways of convincing the patient to go for a more expensive surgery?
See, basically, like Shilpi has already said, there are 2-3 types. One is LASIK, the one is SMILE. Now then we have ICLs, implantable contact lenses. So these are the broad criteria into which these refractive surgeries are divided. The others, like, LASIK, some would say customized LASIK, or femto LASIK and all, in which it's basically the incision, instead of being made with a blade, is being made by a laser. So the others are like branding, So I would not say which is better, which is not. These are different categories. LASIK itself has a lot of subdivisions. I feel the most important criteria here would be the patient motivation, how motivated the patient is to go in for that surgery, and then the choice is his, whichever surgery he performs. Otherwise, broadly, it's just LASIK or SMILE or ICL.
So Ekta, one common question which every patient asks is, why haven't you gotten LASIK done? I'm asking you because you're wearing glasses.
Sir, I have a pure cylindrical number, and so I don't have a spherical correction for my glasses. So that is one reason. Secondly, there are few, like Madam said, that every surgery has an inadvertent complication or a risk. So I think my profession depends on the accuracy of my eyes. Okay. So I didn't want to take that risk. So I think it's a personal choice. My sisters have got LASIK done, both my sisters, and obviously I am the one who's convinced them. But like I said, there may be a little loss of contrast with the post-LASIK seen in patients. So for us, sir, everyone knows how important, like an ophthalmologist knows how important contrast and precision is during the surgeries. So I didn't want to take that risk for getting the correction done.
So this is the bottom line, is that every patient, every person is a different thing, and it is not just that one size fits all. We have to take into account a lot of factors: the age of the patient, the progression of the number, the type of number, the profession, the visual requirement of people, and whether the near vision is affected, not affected, and what are the different types of options that we have at our disposal, and then reach a decision whether surgery should be done or not be done, and which type of surgery is most suited for the patient. Every surgery, every treatment, be it as simple as wearing lenses, has got its pros and cons, and we have to take into account those pros and cons and then take a decision which is the best suited for that particular condition. So best is to talk to your eye specialist, discuss in detail that what is most suitable for you. I personally would say that the most important decision is choosing the right eye specialist, the right surgeon.
Yes, sir.
That is where you should spend most time at now. That once you've chosen your eye surgeon, then you should really trust that person. If you don't trust that person, don't go to that person.
Right.
True.
So take time, do your research, choose the right person, choose the right specialist, and then go and then discuss, spend time. You may have to go again and again. Don't hesitate in getting it properly, thoroughly examined and tested or repeat tested. Take time, discuss things, ask your question, satisfy yourself, and then proceed further with the thing, because it's a matter of your eyes, it's a matter of your life, so you should play an active role in that. But again, do trust the doctors, and there should not be any mistrust over there. If there's a mistrust, we can change a doctor in that case now. So next,
Sir, also I would want to add one point over here is
Yeah.
that our patients need to be aware of the cons as well.
yes,
Most of the times, I think a refractive surgeon forgets to explain the cons to the patients. And if they come with those complaints, they kind of, try to tell the patient that it's nothing like that. So I think patients also need to be aware of the cons, not just the pros.
Pros and cons both need to be aware of. You should
Yes.
discuss with your eye specialist. You should understand that most information is available on the internet. Also, you should go through that.
Yes.
So I always encourage my patient to become partner in the treatment. So it's not that
Yes,
I am
yes.
treating the patient. Patient is it's a partnership kind of a thing. We're together working on reaching a good solution. So both people should need to understand what it entails in terms of the treatment and the possible outcomes. So we have talked about how to get rid of glasses. There's a thing which we get to hear about lazy eye. What is lazy eye, and how does it occur? What can be done to take care of this? Ekta, why don't you start?
Lazy eye is a condition where there is a difference of a refractive error of more than 2.5, and the patient's dominant eye is the seeing eye, which is having less refractive error and is able to see for distance and near. And the other eye, which has a greater refractive error, is not able to see very clearly, and it gets suppressed. The vision gets suppressed and it tends to get lazy, that the eye stops seeing or sees diminished after a while. So basically it is the non-working eye as compared to the other eye. So the underlying reason for this is the refraction, which is not corrected at the right age. And nowadays with the newer modalities, we can actually treat children at the younger age with a difference of refraction of more than 2.5 with the contact lens, lasers, and we can actually give LASIK to such patients at the right age and not wait until 18 years of age also. So this is the most confusing part of the parents when they say that you normally say that 18 years is the age for LASIK, but in such special conditions where one eye may go into lazy eye, we may consider certain treatment modalities at an early age.
Shilpi, what do you say? What do you add to it?
Okay, so lazy eye, or technically what we call amblyopia in medical terms, is a condition, as we know, when a child is born with like a lot of motor skills and sensory skills. Even the eyesight of the baby is not fully developed. Once a child is born, the child sees very hazy. In the next few months, the child is able to appreciate things at a closer distance than the farther distance, but the development of eyesight, it continues from the birth till approximately age of 4 to 5 years. That is the time duration till 4 years where the maximal development of the eyesight happens. That is the connections between the eye and the brain, and where the processing of the image takes place. Those connections are developed, which help in increasing the quality and the total magnitude of the eyesight. So if due to any reason during that critical period, that from birth to 4 years or 5 years of age, one or both the eyes are unable to see properly, that is, they are not able to focus on a particular thing, the commonest cause being refractive error, just as Ekta told us. If there is an uncorrected or an undiagnosed refractive error, or sometimes there can be congenital abnormalities like squint, one eye is deviating, so obviously that eye is not able to focus on the object of interest, or there is a congenital cataract or any other kind of disorder, the eye which is unable to focus on the object, that does not develop the eyesight. So this is known as the eye becomes lazy. The eyesight in that particular eye, which is not able to see properly, gets stagnated at that particular level, and the better eye, the eyesight keeps on increasing. So this is a better eye, this is a lazy eye. The difference usually is more than 2 Snellen's lines of the chart, which we commonly how we evaluate. So it is very important for the parents. The reason, because sometimes none of us kind of, except for the shooters who are practicing shooting, or painters, or sometimes they do not close one eye at a time. Sometimes at the age of 18 years or 15 years, sometimes accidentally the patient is bathing, there is shampoo in the eye, they close the eye, they realize that the other eye is not able to see, or some dust particle falls in the eye. This is how patients discover that their vision is, one eye is compromised. So it is very important, especially for the kids of the toddler or the preschool children, the parents should be made aware to get their eyes tested compulsorily, even if they do not see any symptoms of a weak eyesight, because the child is very small. Even if the one eye is having less vision, the child will not be able to make that out, and the better eye would keep on functioning. Child will play with his toys, will see the television, will go to school, will do all the work with one eye. Only when the better eye is obstructed, vision is obstructed because of any physical thing, the weaker eye deficit is manifested. So it is very important to get the eyes tested, and one eye at a time. Parents can test that at home also. They can try to close the eye, one eye at a time, and ask the child to look at the TV or the toys. That would tell us if there is any difference in the vision in the two eyes. So that is very important.
Seema, how do we treat this laziness?
See, basically, why the term lazy eye itself explains it is lazy because it is not being used. Anything which is not used over a period of time will become lazy. So here what is happening is we are not providing enough stimulus to the eye to reach the brain so that it starts seeing. That part is being performed by its counterpart, the other eye, which is doing all the seeing work. And this is so aram se, it is sleeping and it has become lazy. So we have to activate this eye. How we do that is by covering the normal eye, which the patient is constantly using, so that now that eye is being sort of woken up, shaken up, made to use. So this we call in our terminology as patching. So once we detect a child as having a lazy eye or an amblyopic eye, up till now, they say till the age of 16 years, patching is a very, very effective, and in my practice, one of the best methods to treat amblyopia, in which we are going to stimulate the lazy eye by patching or covering the normal eye which he uses to see. And the child is made to do all his daily activities, going to school, playing, reading, everything with the help of his lazy or non-seeing eye, which sees less. And if he has a correction, a refractive correction, that has to be done first. It is very important to correct the refractive error first and then advise patching. And also the amount of patching depends on a lot of factors like the age of the child, the amount of refractive error, and the good eye, which we have patched, also open for, let's say, it varies, but usually about once in a week, so that he continues to use that also. So patching is one of the best, most effective methods to improve the lazy eye.
To summarize, basically, the visual development is arrested at a lower level, and that is what is called laziness and amblyopia. It happens if either the eyes have not been stimulated, because there's no clear vision formed between on the two eyes, or the two eyes have not worked in a coordination with each other now. Because both the eyes are required to work in sync with each other for the vision to develop properly, and that is what can lead to laziness, mostly in one eye, sometimes in both the eyes also. And if one eye is lagging behind, the other eye is leading, then after correcting the refractive errors, we try to occlude or patch the leading eye so that the lagging behind eye kind of catches up now. This is called occlusion therapy. There can be part-time occlusion, there can be full-time occlusion, and of course your eye specialist will decide what is best for thing. But the sooner we treat it, the easier is the treatment, the better is the outcome, And yes, it can be treated, some treatment is possible in later life also till the age of 16 years. So, but mostly before the age of 9, 10 years, we should treat the myopia. And so once the laziness has got, can be treated, has got a cure, but has to be done early, and where parents' role is more important than even the role of the ophthalmologist. What is conjunctivitis or infections or allergy of the eye, which is a very, very common thing we get to hear these days? Ekta, why don't you tell us?
Patient will come with complaint of redness of the eyes. There may be watering, pain may or may not be there, and there may be swelling in the eye, swelling of the conjunctiva. So conjunctivitis is basically inflammation or infection of the conjunctiva with the associated watering or pain. There may be causes for this. First and foremost, these days in the COVID era, we are seeing a lot of red eye patients who have complaints of cold, cough, fever, and associated redness of the eye. So we can divide it into causes of bacterial, viral, or traumatic, or inflammation. So bacterial is, we will see that the hygiene status of the patient, maintaining the eyes is not important, is very important. The hygiene may not be adequate, which may lead to bacterial infections of the eye, leading to conjunctivitis. And viral, like I said, there may be associated symptoms of cold, cough, fever, and which may cause viral infection in the eye, leading to viral conjunctivitis. And traumatic patient may also patient may complain that there was a blunt injury, or there was a injury of by an insect or something which or a dust, but that may not be present in the eye, but that has left some infection in the eye leading to conjunctivitis.
How do we recognize this at home, and how can we treat this conjunctivitis at home? So these days it's not easy to go to the hospital. People don't want to go to the hospital. For a simple condition like conjunctivitis, can it be picked up at home and treated by the patient himself? No.
So I think if the patient is planning not to go to the doctor and just sit back at home and try and treat it, first and foremost, I would advise the patient not to take any over-the-counter medications. And first, just thorough, frequent washing of the eye is very important. And then, if adequate water, clean, boiled and cooled down water is used and eyes washed, many of the times it may resolve with that. And after that, patient can, nowadays doctors are available online, so patient has to confirm with the doctors before starting any over-the-counter medications, because most of the time these medications may have some steroid in it, and that may cause the flare-up of the infection, which may have just been treated with some nice antibiotic eye drops, which I think the doctors would tell the best. And or patients can just use some lubricating over-the-counter drops and try and wash the infection out of the eye. That is the homely treatment which I advise. If it doesn't respond to that, then I think it is best to visit an ophthalmologist or take an online consultation with the ophthalmologist, but not to just start the over-the-counter treatment.
Yeah, correct. I agree with you that, not treat. Most conjunctivitis, especially in the season when it's going epidemic, are viral in nature. They're self-resolving. They become okay over a period of time. We just need to give symptomatic treatment. And so washing the eyes with clean, cold water is a good option. Doing some cold compresses is a good option also. You can at the most use simple lubricant drops, but never use any other medication on your own. It's better to consult somebody, take a treatment for that. Shilpi, what is, these two terms, allergic conjunctivitis and conjunctivitis? What is the difference?
So basically conjunctivitis, the term is inflammation of the conjunctiva, that is the transparent layer over the white part of the eye and under the eyelids. Anything which causes inflammation, or in layman term we say swelling in that layer, is known as conjunctivitis. The causes can be infection, trauma, or allergy. So allergy is also one of the methods by which the inflammation can occur in the conjunctiva. So allergy, in our country, allergy is very common. Especially their allergic conjunctivitis is mainly of two types. One is a seasonal allergy, other is a kind of perennial. There are patients who are having symptoms of allergic conjunctivitis throughout the year. Some have only when the weather changes, whether especially in February, March, when it starts getting warmer, and other now in the October, November, when the weather from warm goes towards colder. So the common symptoms are sometimes swelling in the eyelids. There may be a lot of itching, or there might be gritty sensation in the eyes. The patient say ki kirkiri si lag rahi hai aankh mein. There is itching in the eyes. There may be swelling or puffiness of the eyes, especially when they wake up in the morning, the eyes are puffy. There might be some white sticky discharge, but never a frothy or a pus-like discharge. That is indicative of an infection in the eye. If it is just a watery stickiness in the eye along with a lot of itching, which is comforted after washing the eye with cold water or applying an ice pack over the lids, that is mainly indicative of allergy. Then the patients who are prone to other types of allergies like respiratory allergies or skin allergies, which they are more prone to allergic conjunctivitis or having such symptoms in the eyes. Patients may have some triggers in their houses or their surroundings, like especially plants which are having certain kinds of pollens in a particular season, or there are certain flowering plants in the garden or the courtyard where they go outside, they may experience that once they are out in the garden, they have a lot of itching or irritation, watering from the eyes. Sometimes they have allergy to the pets in the house. So if they don't have a pet and they visit a friend or a family who has a pet, so their fur or can cause allergy. So patient needs to identify those triggers which cause allergy, and allergy, the best mode is to prevent. So keep away those triggers or the factors precipitating an allergy. The common features, as I told you, are watering, itching, irritation, and sandy or gritty sensation in the eyes. Swelling in the eyes can also occur, the puffiness of the eyes.
What is the treatment for allergic conjunctivitis, Seema?
Like Shilpi said, one would be identifying the cause of allergy and staying away from it, which usually doesn't happen. The patient, when he comes, he's usually far into an allergic conjunctivitis. So these days we have very good anti-allergic medications, which when instilled will cure the allergic conjunctivitis. So if your allergy is persisting, you have persistent redness, foreign body sensation, watering without any discharge, that means you're having some sort of allergic conjunctivitis. So consult your ophthalmologist, and instillation of those allergic drops will definitely cure it. These usually have to be continued for a slightly longer period of time so that you're able to control it for a considerable time. Plus, they might sometimes add some oral anti-allergics too if the allergy is too severe. So they also help. And cold compress. Cold compresses definitely help in allergic conjunctivitis.
Great.
One thing I would like to add, sorry to interrupt, eye rubbing should be avoided at any cost, especially by the kids who are prone to allergic conjunctivitis. They tend to rub their eyes very vigorously. So it is very important for us to tell the patients, and especially the pediatric patients, that they should avoid eye rubbing, because eye rubbing as such, it causes a vicious cycle of allergy. It causes more degranulation of allergic substances, allergy inducing substances, and also in the long run, eye allergy can cause harmful effects on the cornea of the eyes. There are several studies which show that they alter the curvature of the cornea, leading to certain changes, namely corneal ectasias. So one thing we have to emphasize, that kids or even adults should not rub their eyes. Whenever they have a feeling or urge to itch their eyes, they should take clean or cold water from the refrigerator, wash their hands properly, and wash with cold waters. That would take care of the itching.
Correct. Yeah, that's a very important message. The rubbing should be avoided, because rubbing can lead to a permanent and bad deformation of cornea and cause various other abnormalities. The technical terms, of course, are ectasia, but in simple terms, it can deform the cornea, that is the black portion of the eye, which can impair vision temporarily or permanently also. The next question is about cataract. So what is cataract, Seema?
So cataract, to explain, now cataract term, how it's a Latin word actually, cataract, which means waterfall. Waterfall in the sense, if you see waterfall falling from a height, it appears absolutely white. So when we see this whiteness in the normally black portion of the eye, it's known as cataract. In India, we call it Safed Motia Bindu. So cataract is basically opacification of a normally transparent crystalline lens which we have inside the eye. For eye to enter the eye to the retina and then to the brain, the whole passage has to be transparent, starting from the cornea and the lens through the retina into via the optic nerve to the brain. So whenever any part of the eye gets opaque, this process is hampered and will lead to a diminution of vision. In case of cataract, the normally transparent lens becomes opaque partially, later on completely, and this leads to blurring of vision. So that is what we call as cataract.
That's a nice term, cataract, and you explained very, very nicely, like a waterfall, you know. And yes, Safed Motia, Safed Pani, Motia Bindu, these are the terms that we use in India. You know. So what are the symptoms of cataract, Shilpi?
Okay. The cataract, basically the large percentage of cataract is age related or senile cataract. That means it's not a disease, it's a part of aging. I tell my patients, as your hair turns gray, it's not a disease, it comes with age. Similarly, the transparent lens inside the eye, that starts losing its transparency with age. And usually after the age of 48, 50 or 55, gradually it starts becoming opaque. When the transparency is affected or the opacity increases to that an extent that it starts giving you trouble, then the patient might, the initial symptoms is blurring of vision. The patient might appreciate that I'm not able to see as clearly I used to see. There might be doubling of the images, or the person might see a shadow of the image just hallowing after a second image in front of it. There is a loss of color. Patient will find desaturation of colors. The things which used to be as bright earlier are not appearing as bright. There is loss of contrast, and patient will be having problems in carrying out their daily activities. These, if the cataract progresses to a very large extent, when the transparency lost to severe extents, then of course the vision is diminished severely. But the early symptoms are this: loss of clarity, sharpness of the image, brightness, color saturation, and also blurring or doubling of the image, or ghosting of the image we can see. So these are the early things by which a patient can understand or just make a guess that, okay, I might be developing a cataract.
So we had posted a detailed video about cataract this Friday. So I think the viewers can look at that video, but we'll take up a few important questions on the same subject. What is the time? When should a person go for cataract surgery? Because surgery is the only treatment available. Ekta, can you explain?
Yes, sir. So I think it is more of a personal choice, like I had said in the video also. But if that diminished vision is causing a reduction in day-to-day activity, dependency on someone for day-to-day activity, also if the changing glasses, there is a frequent number which is changing of the glasses, then I think patient should go in for the cataract surgery, because the cataract is getting harder. And harder the cataract, there will be a difficulty in the surgery. Also, the chances of complications and the risk will increase if the cataract is more hard. So I think there is no need for the patient to wait for the cataract to get hard, or there was a myth which was present since a very long time that the cataract should be white for the surgery to take place. I think that is totally wrong, and patients shouldn't wait for the cataract to go white. And the minute the cataract is diagnosed, I think within 6 months to 1 year, depending on how fast the cataract is progressing, patient should decide and get a surgery done.
Shilpi, there are various surgeries which are available for cataracts, you know, and again, it's confusing for the patient to decide what to go for. Can you help and simplify it for us?
So now,
so first, depending on the cataract, the type of cataract it is. Sorry, was that question for me?
That's so
Sorry, sir.
it's okay, please continue.
No, ma'am, you go ahead, please.
Yes, Shilpi, go ahead.
Okay, so the most common surgery performed nowadays is MICS, or phacoemulsification. We call this microincision cataract surgery. So that is a type of surgery in which using an ultrasonic probe, the hard cataract is made into a very small powdered form. It is broken into small pieces and removed out of the eye using a very small incision, sometimes less than 2 millimeters even. So when we make a very small cut, the healing is faster. There is no requirement of stitches. So that is the advantage of this new surgery over the previous types of surgeries, which involved the requirement of a larger incision in which the cataract was not broken into small pieces. Maybe it was brought out as such. So to bring out a larger cataract out of the eye, we need to make a large cut. So those kind of surgeries are quite non-prevalent now, but yes, they have the importance in special, certain very different kind of situations. We might be required to use them, but the commonest is phacoemulsification using MICS. Now a latest addition is a femtosecond assisted cataract surgery, or we call it FLACS. That is again a type of surgery. Basically the cataract, the removal of the cataract, the breaking it into small pieces and bringing it out is done using a ultrasonic probe. That remains the same, phacoemulsification. But the incisions, the cuts made in the cornea, in the capsule going inside the eye and breaking of the lenses into the smaller pieces is done using a laser, using laser light, femtosecond laser rays. So that reduces the requirement of the phaco energy. That means the amount of energy which is put inside the eye required to break the cataract into smaller pieces, that is reduced using a femtosecond laser. But then again, I say that basically the concept is same. This is advancement over this is the refinement in the surgery. So there is no hard and fast indication, no, that you have to go for a femto surgery or you have to go for a phaco. It is basically an individual decision. You have to discuss certain types of corneas. Eyes have more astigmatism, which would benefit more by making a cut with a special laser machine. So all those individual factors have to be discussed with your ophthalmologist. Only then one can decide. The other, and nowadays, most of the surgeries we are doing, almost 100% of the surgeries are done by implanting an intraocular lens. That is an artificial lens inside the eye, which helps the patient see. Even more, mostly the which we correct is for the distance. If we put a monofocal lens, we are making a patient largely independent of glasses for distance vision, and then we prescribe a near vision correction that the person can use only when reading or doing any kind of near activity.
So that is the next question, that
Okay.
besides the confusing array of techniques, there's also confusing array of lenses which are available. Seema, why don't you explain that what are the, just make it easy for people to understand that what are the broad categories and how to choose between the categories.
This is one of the commonest questions that a patient who is going for a cataract surgery is going to ask you after surgery, which kind of lens you are going to implant in my eye. So basically lenses are divided on a lot of factors. They are divided according to their material, but here I will be talking about the foldable lenses which are implanted after phacoemulsification, which is a routinely performed cataract surgery these days. So the foldable lenses, according to the design, broadly can be either monofocal or multifocal. And nowadays we have a third category of lenses, very good lenses, which are the trifocal lenses. So a monofocal lens will basically correct your vision for distance, and your dependency on reading for near on your reading glasses will continue. So a lot of patients are already in this age group because cataract is a disease of the increasing age. So these patients are already using their reading glasses for reading. So they're pretty comfortable with a monofocal lens, which corrects their vision for distance, and they continue to use reading glasses for near. Now, there is another category of patients which are not very comfortable with reading glasses, and they just want to get rid of their glasses. And for them, cataract surgery is like a sort of a refractive surgery to get rid of glasses. So these group of patients are very good candidates for multifocal lenses, which are so designed that they will focus for a distance as well as they will focus for near. The design is such. But this requires a lot of motivation from the patient because multifocal lenses have slight inherent, defects, not defects, I would say, side effects in them, like they are dependent on the size of your pupil. So they can lead to a lot of glare, and especially at night time, such patients can face difficulty in driving. So you need a motivated patient who completely wants to get rid of his glasses. Plus, he will require the same kind of lens in his other eye. So if a patient has a multifocal in one eye, he will need it in the other eye. A patient who has a monofocal in one eye, you will go for a monofocal in the other eye. So this is about monofocal. Nowadays, in the computer and the mobile age, when we need focusing not only at distance at near, but also at a sort of intermediate zone, that is the computer screen. So you cannot completely get rid of your glasses even with a multifocal lens. So nowadays, the latest advancement, very latest, I would say, are trifocal lenses, which are able to focus at that intermediate zone also. So at the end of the day, it is entirely the choice of the patient at what kind of lenses he would like to use, because I would still say monofocal lenses are still, very comfortable for the patient who are already using reading glasses, because multifocal will lead to slight glare and slight difficulty in, dim light.
So basically, there are two broad categories of lenses. Let us say monofocal and there is trifocal, or
Yeah.
in a way we can call them multifocal itself.
Multifocal.
And the choice basically depends on whether you want to wear reading glasses or whether you want independence from glasses. But the flip side is that there is a slight loss of contrast and slightly more glare with multifocal lenses, which can interfere with nighttime driving. So if your nighttime driving needs are exacting, or there are exacting visual needs at nighttime, you should avoid multifocal. But if you don't have any special night vision needs, then multifocal is a good choice for you. So that can be summarized. And again, I would say discuss with your ophthalmologist and then reach this decision on what type of lens to go for. Here, the next question is that can diabetes cause blindness? Often people ask about that, or they're not aware about that. And there are a lot of people who suffer from diabetes. Diabetes is the next epidemic in India. And with changes in the lifestyle, changing in the eating habit, a lot more people are getting diabetes. So can it cause blindness, Ekta?
Yes, diabetes can cause blindness. So it is a vague statement, but diabetes causes an eye disease for sure if the diabetes is not kept in check. That is, the blood sugar levels are not monitored. There is not proper treatment taken for diabetes. But if there is a proper control of blood sugar, then it will not affect the eye much. But if there is an uncontrolled sugar, improper management of diabetes, then yes, it is going to cause, it may or may not cause blindness in the eye. So starting with what are the different problems which create, which occur in the eye due to diabetes. First and foremost, it may cause a change in the refraction. The patient may come to us with the glasses number which you gave last week has currently is not working. I am having a problem in seeing with those same glasses. Very important is to get the blood sugar levels done. If the blood sugar is not controlled, that may be the reason for the change in the refraction. So we need to advise the patients to get a blood sugar control done and come again for refraction, so that we know what exactly is the refraction of the patient, because the sugar levels may have caused the swelling in the lens of the eye, which has caused the change in the refraction. That comes to just the basic, that is the refraction of the eye. Then if the diabetes still remains uncontrolled, then it may lead to the early formation of the cataract. And if so, that again is because of the uncontrolled sugar, which is causing the swelling of the lens and leading to cataract. And finally, if at this stage also, if the patient is not understanding keeping the sugar levels under control, a proper systemic management of the diabetes is not done, that is when the retina of the patient may also start getting affected, and the further diabetic retinopathy stages, which may lead to blindness. So yes, I will say diabetes may lead to blindness. So
I think your network is a little interrupted, so we can't hear you very, very clearly. Seema, why don't you tell us that what is this diabetic retinopathy and what can be done to take care of that or to prevent that?
So basically, as you have said, diabetes is the next sort of epidemic. And because of India's high population, it is said that 1 in 6 of the diabetics are here in India, China being the leading in number. Diabetes is basically a disease which will affect the small blood vessels. And these small blood vessels being found in the eye will affect the eye definitely. it leads to leakage in these blood vessels, which will lead to leakage and as well as ischemia, that is poor blood supply in these blood vessels, which will lead to the changes of diabetes in the eye, which we broadly term as diabetic retinopathy, which has various stages from mild, moderate to severe. Now, on what factors does this diabetic retinopathy depend? One, it will depend on your duration of diabetes, which is the most important reason. Two, it will depend upon your glycemic control. How good is your blood sugar control? So if you have a strict and a very good blood sugar control, prolonged blood sugar control, not just, like once it is there and then it is not, that is more harmful. A prolonged good blood sugar control definitely delays the onset of diabetic retinopathy. With duration of 5, 10, at 20 years, you will definitely have some sign of diabetic retinopathy. So the duration will also depend on the type of diabetic retinopathy. And third is if you have any other systemic condition along with diabetes. Suppose you have hypertension, then definitely your chances of having diabetic retinopathy are more, and you have to control that hypertension well along with the diabetes. So the takeaway message is that a good blood sugar control is very important to keep diabetic retinopathy in check, and an yearly visit at least to your ophthalmologist to start screening for diabetic retinopathy, because if we catch it at an early level when the changes have just begun, then we can very definitely revert diabetic retinopathy. But if caught in the more advanced stages, when the leakage has already led to formation of new blood vessels inside the eye and bleeding inside the eye, that is the time when it is very difficult, and that is when it will lead to blindness.
So, besides the diabetic thing, retinopathy, there's another thing which you hear about nowadays is called the macular degeneration. That's again a very big and very problematic condition which affects old people. The retina gets affected. Shilpi, can you tell us about it?
Okay, so macula, I can let all our listeners and viewers to understand. Macula is the central part of our retina, that is the sensory layer, or we can say it is the film of the camera, the central part which is responsible for major part of our vision, of our eyesight. That part after a particular age, usually after the age of 65 or 70, there are certain kind of degenerative changes. A lot of age-related degenerative changes happen in our body, just like in the joints or in kidneys. Similarly, in the central part of the retina, a lot of degenerative changes start happening. There is a change in the level of what we say, exchange going on between the blood vessels, and there is a lot of neovascularization, there is exudation, there is a formation of certain kind of deposits which occur in the central part of the retina. When there is an alteration of the alignment of the photoreceptors in this leads to alteration or disturbance in the alignment of the photoreceptors, which are important to process the vision. When these photoreceptors are damaged, or because of the damaged parts of the macula, that compromises the eyesight. So in elderly people, mostly about the 70 years of age, if there is a change in the central field of vision, the person might perceive patchy loss of vision or distortion of image, that is a straight line is appearing wavy, or there is a small part of the vision which is blurred and the rest of it is clear. Usually what happens that the patient says, when I try to look at a particular object, the point where I'm focusing, that point appears blurred because that is the point where the macula is focusing and the surrounding area remains clear. So that is very indicative of early changes of macular degeneration. So that is why it is suggested that all the people, in fact, all of us should go for an annual eye checkup, especially the elderly, to check for the early changes of macular degeneration. Because if there are early changes and we initiate a treatment properly, then maybe we can arrest the progression of the changes affecting the central part of the vision and preserve the central functional vision.
Great, that's very, very important thing, and you brought in the concept of preventive eye care. So since we have paucity of time, I am skipping the other important things, but leading to very, very important part, the preventive eye care. So one by one, let me just hear all of you say that what is your concept of preventive eye care? What can people do to prevent eye diseases or to take care of their eyes? Starting with Seema.
See, because I am working with an organization which is called the Employee State Insurance Corporation, which deals with all the factory workers. Basically, the Employee State Insurance Corporation, it's a all India organization where we look after the employees which are working in the factories, which have a salary of less than 20,000 rupees and their families. So for me, preventive eye care is about protecting the eyes of the factory workers. So people who are into work and where they are working on machines, we see a lot of people who get injured even today while working on machines, or who get exposed to bright light during welding. So wearing protective eyeglasses during work is very important, especially if you are exposed to, say, bright light. If you are exposed to sharp objects, then wearing protective eyeglasses is very important. And this is sort of besides the topic talking about factory workers. Otherwise, preventive eye care would mean in today's scenario, like working on the computer, we have already discussed how to prevent our eyes from fatigue, how to prevent overuse of our eyes. That also we have discussed in detail. And preventive eye care, a very important part is a very regular eye checkup, like say for diabetes or refractive errors. So once you're visiting your ophthalmologist regularly, it is the most important part in detecting a disease in its earlier stage. Because we haven't discussed glaucoma here, I would like to bring the importance of preventive eye care in glaucoma. Yeah. Glaucoma, especially if you have a family history of glaucoma, it is very, very important that you start yourself to get screened for glaucoma from your eye surgeon at an early age, so that it is detected right at the beginning. That is how we can prevent glaucoma from causing blindness. So a routine eye checkup, especially in patients who have family histories of eye diseases, refractive errors, diabetes, is the most important step in catching the disease at an early stage, preventing its prevention, and preventing blindness due to that disease.
So, Ekta, what would you say? Especially like you've done, your retina is your specialty in terms of retina. What are the preventive things that one can do?
So for retinal checkup, I think every person, not just having diabetes.
I think her network is having some issue.
Yes, yeah. So, Shilpi, why don't you talk about your views on prevention?
A lot of things Dr. Seema has already covered. The other important things are like, especially for myopes, retina regular examination is very important. People may have a history of retinal detachments in their families. They are more prone to develop it, so they have to get it checked regularly. And other common things, which is like injuries, day-to-day injuries, especially in kids. Because in India, we do not have regulation of a lot of things, like the sale of some chemicals. A lot of toilet cleaners and the floor cleaners, they are not very stringent in the percentage of the chemical components. So they are freely available and they are a cause of a lot of injuries here. So that has to be very carefully dealt. Loose tuna is very freely available in India, and that is a very big, huge cause of chemical injuries in India. Other thing is, now the festival of Diwali is coming, so we have lot of firecracker injuries. And apart from the industrial injuries, as Dr. Seema just said, that the people who are involved into welding, cutting and grinding, they have the projectiles coming into the eyes. They need to wear protective glasses and face shields to prevent the injuries. Similarly, in the festival of Diwali, people should take utmost care, especially for the kids. They should play with the crackers in the open area and keep the kids away from them. Keep the stock of the crackers away from yourself. And in case of any chemical injury or any physical injury, if there is any physical injury or chemical injury, immediately go to an ophthalmologist and do not use any medication on your own. These are few things. And other thing which I also told, that it is very important to detect undiagnosed refractive error in kids. So always for toddlers, even if the parents do not suspect any refractive error, it is important to get their eyes checked up at least once in the age of 3 to 4 years. Take them to an eye specialist and get the eyes checked properly, including a refraction done properly. So I think these are few more things which I need to add in it.
Yeah. Ekta, we had lost you in between. What are the points that you would like to add to all this?
Sir, I think both the ma'ams have covered it very nicely, but one thing I would want to add is every kid, whether having a problem, not having a problem, should visit an ophthalmologist once before they go to school. so that they are diagnosed early of any refractive errors. So the parents' role is very important. Also for diabetic patients, whether they have a problem or they do not have a problem, they need to have an ophthalmologist as visit fixed in their routine examination, routine day-to-day life. That is, whenever they go to a physician, they need to visit an ophthalmologist for sure. That is what I feel, so that they are treated at an early stage. The disease is caught up at an early stage, and we can help, along with the physician, we can help them from landing into blindness. That's it, sir.
Correct. So let me summarize about the preventive part. No, I would say that there should be, we should all be aware of a routine of preventive eye examination. When a child is born, at the time of birth, a preventive eye examination should be conducted. It is conducted normally by the pediatrician, but if there's any doubt found, then the child should be taken to an ophthalmologist also. Then at the age of 1 year, the child should be examined. Though the examination will be very, very basic, we cannot detect much in that, but it should be there. Then after that, when the child becomes verbal and is able to read something, so around the age of school entry, 3 to 5 years of age, that is a very, very important visit. You must get your child examined at the time of school entry, let us say. And thereafter, if everything is fine, then once in 2 years, so once in 2-3 years time, there should be a routine examination done. But if there's any problem detected, say there's any refractive error, there's a family history of any problem, then maybe more frequent examination, once in a year examination may be required till the age of 40 years. After the age of 40 years, we should all undergo a routine eye examination once in a year to detect things like glaucoma, which if picked up early, further the problems can be prevented, but picked up late, it may be difficult to treat them, diabetic retinopathy, cataracts, age-related degeneration and all. So all this can be picked up on a routine examination. People who got diseases like diabetes, or there's a family history of glaucoma, or there's a family history of refractive errors, they should be even more particularly careful about routine eye examination. So at birth, at the age of 1 year, at the time of school entry, thereafter once every 2 years or so, till the age of 40, and then thereafter every year routine examination should be done. And always be fully aware of the thing, protect your eyes. If you're in a hazardous profession, wear proper protective gear to save your eyes. If you perform any hazardous or potentially risky activity, put some eye protection on. I would say that people who are leading a very active life, running and cycling, for example, if you're cycling or if you're biking, you must wear a protective eye thing. Never go onto the road without glasses on. So riders, bikers, runners should wear a protection on their eye. When you go hiking onto high altitudes, wear sunglasses on. Wear glasses with which you got UV filter in it. Slow blindness is a real thing. So all my friends who lead a very, very active life should take care of their eyes also. So that brings us to the end of today's session. We had to cut it short because of the paucity of time. Thank you, Dr. Seema. Thank you, Dr. Shilpi. Thank you, Dr. Ekta, for being expert on this
Thank
show.
you, sir.
Being very, very important part of our very important part of our group as such, And so your role does not end today's thing. You have to continuously contribute to the activity of the group, And
are we taking questions?
TLC, the live chat.
So if there are any audience questions, I can take those questions now before we finally wind up the thing.
Yeah. There are a few questions. There is, first of all, it's like a myth buster. The question was like, does walking on grass having dewdrops in the morning, does it affect eyesight? If yes, how?
Shilpi?
So a lot of people say that बच्चे को चश्मा लग गया, हम इसको सुबह घास पे चलाएंगे. So I would just say that घास पे चलना is not going to affect the eyesight. Early morning walking on grass on dewdrops is supposed to give you fresh air exposure because there is less pollution in the air. So that is indicative of a healthy activity so that you go outdoors and breathe in fresh air. But definitely it is not going to affect the refraction in the eyes. So please do not try to do away with the requirement of glasses by walking on the dewdrops in the grass. You have to wear corrective glasses or lenses or whatever, but this is definitely a myth and you should not substitute it with for the glasses requirement.
I guess it's a good way to make the child get up early in the morning.
Yes. So that's what
before the dew disappears.
So if you get up early in the morning and walk on the sun, on the grass at the time of sunrise,
Yeah.
it's good for the eyes because you see
Vitamin D
beautiful
synthesis,
things.
everything.
You can take beautiful pictures, it's good for the health overall, actually.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Placebo, huh? It's a placebo.
Yes. It's not a placebo, actually. See, what it means, sometimes it is not the direct benefit which is helping.
Yeah.
It is the indirect benefit.
Indirect,
The fact that if you wake up early, you'll sleep early. So if you sleep early, you're more disciplined now. So
You'll use the mobile and computer less at night,
yes, so
At
bringing in
nighttime,
discipline.
mobile use should be cut down.
Yeah, so bringing in
Yeah.
discipline to your life, bringing in awareness about health, and following the natural ways of living are extremely helpful in the overall health.
Yes.
Another question is, what is dry eye syndrome? Is it the same as computer vision syndrome?
So we have dry eye expert Shilpi.
Dry eye syndrome is basically, it's not same as digital or computer vision syndrome. Dry eye syndrome is a separate entity, clinical entity, in which it's a multifactorial condition. The endpoint is that the patient experiences a array of symptoms of dryness in the eye. It is basically of two kinds, in which either the amount of tears produced in the person's eye is less, that is the production of the moisture is less, or the second type, in which the amount of tears produced is normal, but they are unable to stay inside the eye and provide the required lubrication. So any factor, so computer vision syndrome is one of the factors which can cause dry eye syndrome. So dry eye syndrome is a bigger entity, and it is multifactorial. It can be because of computer vision syndrome. It can be because of certain other hormonal changes in the body. It can be because of other diseases in the body. It can be as a side effect of many long-term medications which patients use and other conditions. So digital syndrome or a computer vision syndrome is one of the factors which may cause dry eye syndrome. They are not the same.
Okay. Now Rajesh, he's on Zoom. He had a couple of questions. So can I just unmute him
Yes, do
and
that.
invite him over?
Please go ahead.
Let's see. Rajesh, are you here?
Yeah.
Okay. You can ask your questions directly. You can turn the video on too.
It's not getting turned on. Okay, I'll just ask. Dr. Sanjay, good morning. My
Good
question
afternoon.
takes me back to the time when I was not wearing glasses. The
Right,
year
sir.
was 1990.
Right, sir.
Like Dr. Shilpi said, one would realize that he's got an eye issue accidentally. I was in a very major flying exercise in which we were supposed to spot a number of attackers coming and attacking our formation. It was a make and break situation in my career, and I could not spot the trail attackers at a distance of more than 5-6 kilometers. So they stopped my flying and sent me to a hospital in Jamnagar. There I was diagnosed with serious eye issue. Firstly, I was told that if you don't start wearing glasses from tomorrow, in 15 days time, your number will double. Second, the lady doctor who attended to me there, she said, sir, you have a congenital blue dot cataract. Now, I got my glasses, I did the course, I did pretty well. But this issue of blue dot cataract stayed with me. Is it treatable? Does it have any implications now?
Yeah, so the glasses number, of course, that has been taken care of in your eyes, and that's
Yes.
a reflective error which you had and which developed and which is being corrected. Blue dot, congenital blue dot cataract is a very, very common finding. It is present since birth. There's the bluish dots in the lens, as the name suggests, and they're usually harmless. They do not affect the vision. They do not progress or increase with the time. They do not even affect the onset of age-related cataract now. So you can simply forget about it. It's just an incidental finding in the lens of your eye, which has got bluish.
What my issue as a pilot was that these dots that are floating around in the eye, they used to appear to me as an aircraft coming at me. So I had issues with
yeah, so those dots are different from the blue dot cataract. Those are the
Right.
floaters in the eye.
Those are floaters. Fine.
Yeah. The hollow of the eye is filled with a jelly called vitreous. The core of that vitreous is a fluid, and sometimes these gel particles, they break away into that fluid and they float around like
Understood.
floaters.
I would like to add here,
Yeah.
on the same course, I had to deliver a lecture of 16 hours. The topic was optronic sensors. And
Okay.
the first 2 hours were on human eye.
Okay. These floaters can actually happen with age. They can happen with myopia.
Right.
They can happen
Right.
after surgery. They can happen, without any known reason also. They come and go, and they don't always completely disappear. Some odd spots may always remain. You have to simply ignore them. They're more prominently visible when you look at a very bright background, say, look at the sky, look at a white sheet, but you should just learn to simply ignore them. They're harmless. But you should get your retina examination done. If retina is fine, then these floaters are of no consequence.
Thank you.
Any other question, Manpreet?
I'll post rest of my questions directly to you. There are a couple of questions.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead, sir. Please go ahead.
One is firstly, that's the time I started wearing glasses. The biggest challenge was when the doctor told me, would you like to have normal lenses or bifocals or defocals or progressive? This is something new to me. What are we supposed to do when somebody asks me?
Okay, yes. So after the age of 40, 45, when we have a number for distance as well as for near, then one particular glass which has just one single power does not serve all the purposes now. So we are left with various compromised choices. This one choice is that you have a different glass for distance and different one for near, and keep swapping the glasses, which is very, very inconvenient. Then there is bifocal glasses, where the upper part of the glass is meant for far vision and the lower part is meant for near vision. So there's a small segment in the lower part which is in the circle or D, but which again may not be very convenient.
My doubt is, should it be bifocal or a defocal or a progressive?
Yeah, so I'm coming to that. So the third option is to go for what is the newer one called the progressive glasses, where the power changes from top to bottom, from distance to near in a continuous fashion. But it's a very narrow zone in which the power changes. Outside the zone, the power is for distance, and in between the two things, there's a distortion. Okay. So these three options are there: separate glasses, bifocal, or progressive. None of them is ideal. So none of them will be like a natural vision. Each of them involves some degree of compromise. So it depends on your requirement. For most people, progressive glasses work quite well, but there's a period of adjustment. It takes almost 2 to 4 weeks to get used to them, and they have to be fitted very, very properly by a trained optician onto your eye, in relation to the frame and in relation to the pupil, and also in relation to the angle at which you normally read. If they're well fitted, if they're good made, and if you get enough time, then they are the best compromise. Again, as I said, compromise. They're not ideal, but that is the compromise. I'm also wearing progressive glasses. Most people these days are wearing progressive glasses because, and there are various types of progressive glasses available. You can always discuss with the optician to which one to go for, but they require proper fitting and they require enough time for you to get tuned to this. So I would say that in the beginning, when you go for the glasses for the first time, don't walk around with the progressive glasses. Use them while you're sitting down and reading and watching TV. While walking around, either wear just the distance glass.
Absolutely disappeared. I started wearing progressive icon.
Yeah, so just either wear the distance glass or take the glasses off and then walk around. Once you're comfortable with these glasses while sitting, then slowly get used to them while walking also. So it may take you about almost a month's time to get used to these glasses.
Okay, one last question.
Yes, sir.
My son is 27 years. He's a lawyer doing a lot of computer work. He started wearing glasses when he was 10 years old.
Right, sir.
His number today is both eyes is around -8.
-8?
8. And he doesn't leave his gadgets. I wanted him to see this program, but youngsters these days, I'm still watching TV in the next room.
Right. So there is nothing much that you can do about it. You have to just let him be.
He came to me with an idea one day that he wants to join the army and is tied up with somebody in Delhi for a LASIK surgery. Get the number down.
Right.
And he's given up that motion. Happy doing party cases in Delhi now. But -8 scares me a little bit.
So there are some criteria now. These days, the army, the defenses, even the Air Force is allowing LASIK as a treatment modality. But again, they have some very stringent criteria. They define what is the refractive error which should be there before the thing. What is the corneal thickness should be there before and afterwards. What is the duration and what is change in the curvature. So there are very strict criteria for that. But I think -8 is probably beyond that. They have to allow, say, up to -6 or so. And that too should be corrected, say, at least a year before the medical examination. And corneal thickness should also be.
Given up that idea, but just from the point of view of pure eyesight, is this alarming? -8.
So whether it's -8, -6, -5, it's all equally bad. So don't get alarmed by that. No. And it'll be a good idea to get him examined. And if he's looking for a solution from the point of view of his own lifestyle, there are options and there are means to correct that. But he may not become eligible for the forces.
No, he's given up that idea.
Yes. Yeah. So, but for his vision correction, there are options available. And so it'll be a good idea to get himself examined for that.
Thank you. Excellent session, all of you. All doctors have at least one S in their name: Shilpi, Sanjay, Seema, and Shah. That's fantastic. Was it planned that way? Planned that way.
No, I just realized that.
Thank you very much, sir. Any other question, Manpreet?
There is just one question as a follow-up to the last question Rajeshri had. So this girl, she's 36 and she said, my number is stable for last several years. And you mentioned that if I get a LASIK done, usually the spectacle-free period is only 22 years to 40 years. So at the age of 36, is it suggestible to go for LASIK? And her number is minus 9.5 and minus 10.5.
So minus 9, minus 10 is a very large number. At any age, it will be hugely beneficial to go in for a correction. See, a person who's wearing minus 8, minus 10 is without glasses is practically blind. No? So from that extreme dependence on glasses and extremely blurred vision, if the vision becomes clear for most of the things and he requires or she requires only for reading work, it's a huge benefit. So we should always take into account the risk-benefit ratio. So here the benefit is huge. No? So I would advise, say, a LASIK or any form of correction to this person even after the age of 40. And also, these days there are options available which can correct both the distance and near also. So all that can be considered. But I would say for very high myopia, just correcting the distance vision is hugely beneficial. Most of these people do very well for the near vision also without any additional correction. So, and high myopia is correctable. Minus 8, minus 10, it is a borderline thing. We have to see whether it is LASIK which is possible or an ICL implantation surgery which is possible. But yes, correction can be done. And it is still worthwhile even at the age of 36 to think of correcting if this high myopia is there, provided everything else is normal, if the retina is in good shape.
Okay. Yeah, I think she should, because at such a high myopia, even if we slightly undercorrect one eye, she will be able to go on with her near work for quite a long time.
Correct.
Should go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. That's it. That covers all the questions.
So thank you very much. Thanks, audience, for being here and listening to us and being part of our group. It is your participation, your contribution, which makes the LifeChat group a very, very lively and vibrant group. Looking forward to more activities, more things. I think Dr. Girish will be starting a new activity, the home, very, very soon. And keep participating, keep staying involved in the group, and see you next week. Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye, sir. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Sanjay. Thank you, Dr. Manpreet. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Manpreet.
Thank you for helping in the
Bye,
background
everybody.
today.
Thank you, everyone.
Now to look for the songs.